guys, welcome back to Sports with Mono and Mono. And unfortunately, my partner and little baby brother Steven is just not feeling up to it right now. He's been dealing with a medical issue for a few weeks now. So I'm pulling for you. He'll be okay. He's just not up for the show today, but he sends his regards to all our loyal listeners and thanks them for their support, which an abundance of support for him, and he'll be okay. Um, anyway, so we'll ping my producer Rob in the background when we get to our NFL picks. But today is New Year's Eve. It's the last day of 2022, so we move into 2023 as of midnight tonight. So we start our show weekly with our monologue, which is, of course, sponsored by Coriano Trucking of Summerhill, New York. And Rob, I know you're behind the curtains here today, but from a perspective of notable passings, and we're kind of going to jump to the front of this first because Pele passed away. And I know I brought up a little bit about him last week. I recommended there's a video of him, just getting brutalized on the field of play. But you know what? He was a class act. And when we lose somebody of that magnitude for the most popular sport in the world, it certainly is worthy of bringing that up, right in the beginning of the show. He was 82 years old. And I did mention, I think last week, that I had an opportunity to see him play in person for the New York Cosmos. And obviously, it was the end of his career. But I thought what was really cool, he used to play for this team, Santos. And they were playing the Cosmos in Giant Stadium. I think this was like 1975 or maybe 76. And he played one half for the Cosmos and one half for Santos. And like I said, from a class act perspective, and on Sports with Mono and Mono, we take character and classy personalities very, very seriously. And he was certainly one of those sports figures that was, on the field and off the field, just a class act. And that's a big loss for the world of soccer and for sports in general. And I wanted to make sure that we gave him his proper due because he was a classy, great player, only player to win 3 World Cups. The guy had played in over 1,300 professional games and had over 1,200 goals. So that kind of puts it into perspective that how dominant he was. And I don't really think there's any question. You could put Messi in the category of the discussion, but it's got to start at number 2 because I think Pele was the greatest of all time in the most popular sport in the world. So RIP to Pele, 82 years old. So Rob, let's move right into the conversation because it's been bowl season, and every night there's been 2 or 3 bowls. I honestly don't remember there being that many bowl games in college football, but obviously there's 2 big games today: Georgia, Ohio State, and TCU, Michigan. And this is 2 tough games to pick because Ohio State did lose to Michigan this year, and they're playing against Georgia, who, they haven't lost a game in 2 seasons right now. So that's going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I do think Georgia may be a little bit too much for Ohio State. So I'm actually going to go. I think that's probably, and one of our loyal listeners, Mike Garvey, asked us if we could bring it up. And I don't usually bring up point spreads and all that, but Ohio State, I think, is 7.5 point underdog to Georgia. Again, you could pick it. I'm going to take Georgia to win the game. what you guys do with your point spreads, that's up to you. And then the other intriguing game, and this one I'm gonna go with the underdog here because it's TCU Michigan. And Steve has been on Sonny Dykes and TCU's bandwagon all season. And you know what? Justifiably so. This kid, Max Duggan, has had an incredible year. I think they could pull the upset over Michigan today. I think it's somewhat, again, what you guys do with the point spread. I think it's Michigan 4.5 over TCU. But I like this chance today. I think that would be my upset special. So, the games are one's at 4, one's at 8, and this is going to decide the national championship in college football. And what's obviously unique is we're not having this conversation with Alabama in there and Clemson in there. Clemson lost their bowl game, kind of got smoked by Tennessee last night. So, I mean, it's been an off year for Dabo and Clemson, and their starting quarterback for most of the season is transferring. Again, with this college football portal thing, you can go wherever you want, basically. But it was definitely an off year for both Alabama and Clemson. But Notre Dame won their bowl game last night. Great game, actually. They survived 2 pick sixes, to win that game. But Notre Dame had, I'm going to say a pretty successful season considering it was Marcus Freeman's rookie year as head coach of one of the most prestigious programs in college football. So look for them to be bounced back and be a competitive team, top 10 maybe, next year. The producer just joined them. Yeah, I know he's got a comment about Notre Dame, so fire away.
Well, it looks like we're getting the starting quarterback from Wake Forest
to be our starting. Sam?
Yeah, I forget his exact name.
Sam Hartman?
I think so. I think it's his name. A very, very good player, underrated, who wants to come into a pro-style offense and showcase his skills for the NFL. Just like our guy, what's his name? From Seattle. What's his name? He stinks this year. I forget off the top of my head.
Russell Wilson
did the same thing. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, let's see how that pans out. But I just got a comment and a football and thumbs up from my grandson Logan. Thanks, Logs. And he writes, "Go LSU." I know he likes that because Justin Jefferson, his favorite football player. Well, Patrick Mahomes and him are his 2 favorite football players. But thanks for listening, buddy. You're the best. All right. So listen, a couple other things. There was a St. Joe's connection. As you know, on our show, we bring up St. Joe's. We got a St. Joe's guy starting center for Ohio State, Luke Whippler, today. And last night was Nick Patty. Basically been a backup for, I think, 5 seasons. I don't know if they count one of the seasons as the pandemic, but Nick Patty beat UCLA. That was a big upset, and that was, that's a proud moment for Nick Patty and his family, and for the St. Joe's community. So congratulations to him. It really, it just shows perseverance, right? Maybe if the transfer portal was wide open like it is now, maybe Nick Patty would have went off somewhere else looking for that starting opportunity. But he was a diehard commit to Pitt, and it all paid off. And it's a big moment for him. Congratulations. So big win for Pitt. Anyway, so listen, enjoy the college games today. It's New Year's Eve. It's kind of great. So the final will be January 9th, I believe. And let's see who it's going to be. I'm going out on a limb and saying I'm going to take Georgia and TCU to meet in that game. But I'm pulling for Ohio State, just so you know. Anyway, so Rob, the NFL is, down to the last 2 weeks of the season. This is, there's still a lot of teams on the bubble about getting in the playoff scenarios with the Giants and Jets. And, the Jets are just, I don't know what happened, boy. They were 7-4 at one point. Now they're 7-8. So their playoff hopes are all but shot. Giants still have a shot. I think if they win one of the last two and 73 other things happen, then they're going to make the playoffs. And we'll see. This, like I said, if they lose to Indianapolis, a team that everybody's been, wiping their feet on from a doormat perspective, they have to win that game. And, there's even a better chance, in the last week of the season against Philadelphia, if Jalen Hurts is still not playing, or, we're going to see, they may need that game to get the bye in the first round of the playoffs. So that could help him, but we'll see how that pans out. A lot of unknowns, right? I think a game today, tomorrow is Tampa, Carolina. And I know Carolina's been playing better, but I don't think Tom Brady is going to let his team lose to a team that really, even if they make the playoffs, they're not going anywhere. And they traded their best player and Christian McCaffrey, so forth. So we'll see how that stuff goes. We talked about this the other day about trying to move on from these quarterbacks, and this is a situation. And Steve brought up, and we're both Ron Rivera fans, but I don't know that this is the right time to put somebody like Carson Wentz in the starting lineup, replacing the guy that basically has been 5-3, I think, as a starter. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I think they're going to ultimately regret it because Carson Wentz is not the quarterback that has proven time and time again that he can't win that big game, and sometimes he looks ridiculous. This is, if he ends up playing a great game, and Ron Rivera looks like a hero for making that decision, but if he doesn't, then I think he's going to regret that. So we'll get our picks in a moment. But there was a couple other notable things in the National Football League. Obviously, Nathaniel Hackett was fired. You just brought it up before. I don't know what happened to that Denver team, but I did say even bringing Russell Wilson in there didn't make them all of a sudden a Super Bowl contender, especially in the AFC. So it cost him his job. It's just been an absolute disaster. I don't know if this means Russell Wilson is finished, but he's certainly not Patrick Mahomes and that kind of thing. But also a pending retirement, and this guy had a great career, probably going to the Hall of Fame. J.J. Watt retiring after this year, and he's been battling some injuries and some stuff, but he's had a great career. And his brothers, will carry on the Watt tradition for your Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
Yep.
Hell of a player too, but J.J. Watt has always been a classy guy, and that's going to be a big loss for the NFL when you lose some marquee type player like that. But wanted to bring that up too.
And Jim, one more point I wanted to make.
Yep.
You mentioned the Jets before. How big a slap in the face is this? Sam Darnold is going to be the starting quarterback next year for the Panthers. He's playing really well right now. I think all the quarterbacks, Zach Wilson and, Baker Mayfield goes there and gets shipped out. Sam Darnold somehow still is on top of that small hill. He's still on top somehow. That's awesome.
Well, listen, my position on Sam Darnold. And, okay, maybe he's got a hot hand lately, but he's still not going to be my starting quarterback if I was the general manager of any team in this league. But I wanted to bring that up. And Rob, I'm glad you did, because when we're talking about quarterbacks, right, this whole Zach Wilson thing has just blown up on the Jets. And now you got this thing. And I've been very critical of and consistent in my doubting of Derek Carr's ability to be a number one or a top four quarterback in this league. And obviously his candle's burning low in Las Vegas, and he's benched for the last 2 weeks of the season. So you know what that means. He's going somewhere next year.
Yeah, he'll be
And
a
that
jet quarterback next year.
You know, do
He'll
the
be jet
Giants
quarterback
want to
next
pay
year.
Daniel Jones, or do they want to sign up for Derek Carr? These are the intriguing off-season decisions that we'll hear. But yeah, I just listen. I hate to say that I've been right. I think I was right on Darnold, and I think I was right on Derek Carr. Anyway, but I wasn't right on Zach Wilson. I actually thought that would have been the right pick for the Jets, but that is not working out at all.
And speaking of New Year's Eve and tomorrow being the start of 2023, who's had the worst year of anybody than Tom Brady? He loses in the playoffs. He retires, comes back, loses his family, and plays on a below 500 team that still might not make the playoffs. Who's had a worse year than Tom Brady?
I know it is. You know, this is hard to see. Now we're all asking ourselves, is 45, is that the brick wall you just crashed into? I don't know. Does he have one more thing? You know what? He's going to be playing somewhere in the National Football League next year.
Crazy, right?
I know, but the guy can't give it up. But if you're right, I think they're going to make the playoffs, but they could possibly go into the playoffs with a sub 500 record. So this isn't what we're accustomed to seeing. And, from an NFL perspective, they love having this guy on. It's great for ratings. People are all over it. They love them. But you got to wonder, but he's 45 and we're saying the candle may be burning low, and Russell Wilson's 34 and people are saying the candle's actually out. So 10-year difference between these guys. It's crazy. But we'll see. So Rod, let's jump into our picks for the week. And by the way, congratulations to you, because you were 3-0 last week.
Is that now 6-0 the past 2 weeks?
Yes, you were 3-0. Hey, by the way, I've had a hot hand too, buddy. So I was 3-0 last week as well. So
and I don't bet, which is crazy,
Yeah. But like I said, we'll do our picks, but today belongs to college football, and tomorrow's back to the NFL. So here are my 3 picks for the week. This is an intriguing game. I don't know. I think Miami is in New England, and it's kind of been a roller coaster season for Mac Jones, Belichick, and the Patriots, right? Kind of not what we're accustomed to seeing. We thought there'd be a lot more maturity on Mac Jones's second year in the league, but they just had an off year. But Miami, I've never been a buyer of them, and I don't know that Tua is going to play this week again. And we could be looking at some serious, when you keep getting concussions like this, his career is certainly in jeopardy. So I'm taking New England over Miami today. And a lot of people think I'm crazy, but you know what? New England is home. Belichick still has a possibility of making the playoffs if, 103 different scenarios pan out. But I like New England today. And another intriguing game. And, we've been on this Aaron Rodgers bashing carousel for the whole season, because like I said, I've changed my opinion of him from just a soft-spoken leader, and now just his presence just kind of revolts me. But I think they upset Minnesota today. Like I said, Minnesota is a tough team to figure out. They did have the biggest comeback in NFL history, but they barely escaped against the Giants. So I'm going with I think Aaron Rodgers still has some gas in the tank for sure. and I'm not pulling for him. Excuse me, but I like Green Bay today. And this is the game you brought up before, Rob, with your favorite player, Sam Darnold, leading the Carolina Panthers into Tampa with playoff implications for sure. But I think I'm going to take the high road here and take Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. Um, I can't. If I had 5 nickels left in my pocket, I wouldn't put one of them on Sam Darnold. So those are my 3 picks for the week, and I will turn it over to you, and you can see if you can continue this unbeaten streak in the past 2 weeks. Give me your picks, kid.
All right. Well, I'm with you on the Pats over the Dolphins. I don't care if it's Tua or Teddy Bridgewater. They'll find a way to stop a quarterback.
Yes.
And when the Pats stop a quarterback, they're pretty much done. They'll pound the run game, eat the clock up, and make the offense ineffective. So I like the Pats as well.
Okay.
I like the Lions over the Bears, even though it's a big point spread. I know they got decimated last week. Lions, they didn't show up, big game, playoff potential. But, I believe in that coach, Dan Campbell. And, hey, even an 8-9 season for the Lions is a huge success and stepping stone. So I see them beating the Bears this week. And finally, our New York Giants, if they don't show up and beat, like you said, the lowly Colts, who can't beat anybody these days, if they can't show up at home on a warm day in January 1st with a huge fan base that wants this, they've been emailing. I don't know if you noticed that. They've been emailing out the ticket holders to come prepared to be loud. They're actually emailing everybody. So if Giants can't pick themselves up and win this game tomorrow, go home.
Yeah, well, certainly if they don't win this game, they don't deserve to be in the playoffs. So I think they do show up, and Indianapolis is just an absolute train wreck altogether. I don't know. Obviously the early reports are the Saturday experiment didn't work so well so far, right? But I agree with you. I think the Giants will show up. Home game and implications on the line, and I think the difference between the past 5 years and this year is Brian Daboll, and I think he's not going to let them leave that on the field and get embarrassed against an Indianapolis team. So I agree with you there. You know what though, this Lions thing, and I don't know, is Justin Fields playing today? I'm not sure. It's hard for me to buy into this. Although, listen, the building blocks for the Lions look very promising, right? With this St. Brown and Jamison Williams, they got a good running game now, so they're trending in the right direction. But this could be a stumble and fall game for Jared Goff, and he does need to win this game. And yeah, I guess when you consider 500 in today's NFL, especially for this season, it's not so bad.
I tell you, Jared Goff, really, hey, he's played pretty well overall, but the team winning all these games that they've won, they're taking themselves out of that first bunch of teams that need a quarterback this year. Hey, maybe that's a spot for Derek Carr next year, right? But Goff might have bought himself another year of a starting quarterback.
Good point. And this is a very intriguing guy because when he first came into the league, he was horrible. And then he got under Sean McVay,
good.
Turned it around. And I even made a statement on this show 2 years ago. I said, that's one of the most dramatic turnarounds from a crappy quarterback to, an outstanding quarterback. And then he kind of reverted back and you started to think, maybe it was the Sean McVay thing that made him that kind of a player. But you know what? I'm rooting for the guy. He's a quiet guy. I don't know how he's perceived by his teammates in Detroit, but you know what? overall from a 500 record perspective with that team, I think I'm pulling for him. But I just wonder if Justin Fields is playing today. I think this could be a stumble and fall game for them. But you know what? You got the hot hand, so I'll bow to you on that one.
One more NFL note, Jim.
Yep.
I like reading a lot of these way too early mock drafts, right? Everybody wants to project. No one knows anything, right?
Right.
But I read one the other day that had our New York Giants taking Michael Mayer with their first pick in the draft. The tight end from Notre Dame.
Michael Mayer.
Oh, baby, I would love that.
Oh, absolutely.
He's going to be like Gronk-like. He's going to be that good.
I mean, things have to happen for that to even get there because he's going to be one of the top 5 picks. And, he's not going to be around if the Giants, slip to 12 or 13. So I think and again, we do this mock draft and you know what? I enjoy doing it with you and your buddy, the actual draft night show, which was outstanding. But we'll be hearing about mock draft for the next, 7 months. And
a mock draft the day after the draft was done. There's already a mock draft.
Exactly.
People are nuts.
But you gotta look at who's going to be up there, and I think Michael Mayer is definitely going to be in the top 5, along with Bryce Young, and I don't know if Caleb Williams is coming out or not. That. So some of those are for him to be available. If the Giants slip to 10, 11, 12 in the draft, they're going to have to make some moves. But
yeah.
And you know what? This kid Bellinger, I don't know that that's the ultimate pressing need. A tight end, it's good to have. He could be the next, Mark Bavaro kind of magic in Giant Stadium. I would love that pick as well, my friend. I would love it as well. So let's just move on, Rob, to the NBA. Wanted to bring this up because there was, this guy, Luka Doncic, the more and more I watch him play, I can't believe how good he has become. And he's still, I bet he's not even 24 years old, if that, 25 maybe, tops. But he dropped 61 on the Knicks. And everybody in New York is all of a sudden hot to trot with the Knicks, and they won 8 straight games and whatnot, but they're still a team that's not going anywhere. And guys like Luka Doncic and Ja Morant and Trae Young, these are guys that, always dominate against the Knicks. But that was pretty cool, man. I think Doncic had 61 points, 20 rebounds, and 10 assists. That's quite I think that might be a record for the Dallas Mavericks. I don't know. Maybe Nowitzki had 60 or something one day too. But that's some interesting thing. And I did bring this up like a few weeks ago, right? There seems to be a quietness going on with the Brooklyn Nets, right? We haven't heard Kyrie Irving's name in 2.5 weeks. Kevin Durant is still probably one of the top 2 or 3 best players in the game. And I said, listen, they're going to go on a streak. They're going to win 10 out of 12 games, or they're going to win 14 out of 20 games. And that's the kind of streak they're on. Again, it's still not palpable for me to even watch Kyrie Irving play basketball. But you got to admit, this Kevin Durant has taken this team. He must have had that conversation with him, said, just keep your mouth shut, play basketball, and I'll get us to the playoffs. And I don't know if they're championship level
right now.
Huh?
They're a 2 or 3 seed right now. And that's a huge jump from where they were a month ago.
But they're going to still have to meet up with guys like Giannis and stuff like that to get out of the Eastern Conference. But anyway, so they're doing pretty good. They're hot. And Rob, I just wanted to bring this up because, we saw Zion Williamson, in college, the consensus #1 pick, right? Just all potential in the world. And, maybe because he got drafted by New Orleans that he wasn't psyched about it in the beginning, but they're putting a lot of pieces around him and he's starting to mature into that player I think we thought he possibly could be. And that's quite a turnaround. I mean, he basically hasn't played. He missed basically 2 seasons. And now, he's got to be all of 23, right? 24 tops.
Yeah.
But he's really turned his game around and he's actually making the New Orleans Pelicans a team that, is worthy of consideration to keep an eye on. I can't dispute that, I don't watch a lot of the NBA because I find it to be, I don't know. It just playoffs, different story, but I'm impressed with the way this guy's bounced around. I like him, and he's an imposing figure in a league of just phenomenal athletes and the young guns, as we put it. But I'm psyched to see him starting to mature into the player we thought he could be. But the NBA, it's we're in playoff season, we're in bowl season. The NBA we could put that on the back burner for a little bit. But I am impressed with Kevin Durant's the fact that he still has that talent. I think he's 34 now or something like that, maybe. But anyway, we'll cover that in depth a little bit more. Rob, obviously after the Aaron Judge signing and so forth, right? The biggest story in Major League Baseball was this Carlos Correa story, which we talked about last week. But this is an intriguing thing. Apparently, now there's problems with his physical with the New York Mets. So this deal may or may not happen after all, unless he takes a major price cut. So there's something going on there that's lingering from this guy. And again, I brought it up time and time again. Like he's a good ball player, but he's a 279 lifetime hitter. He's never driven in 100 runs. And now with this potential injury or some sort of a physical issue going on, I don't know how this is going to pan out for the Mets. And he's apparently, the reports are that he's not willing to reconstruct his contract. So I don't know if that deal, the Mets were all popping champagne bottles for the World Series as soon as they signed him. And I got to say, not so fast. I mean, you have any thoughts on Mr. Correa and his potential physical issues?
Yeah, it's karma. The Mets are trying to do too much at once, and it's going to bite him in the ass.
Well, listen, I mean, if there is, I think the Mets are still willing to take him on, but not at $315 million. Not if there's any kind of concern about his health. So
there's supposedly 4 other teams still swimming around, waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, maybe I guess you can cross the Giants off that list, right? But everyone said, wait a minute, has he passed the physical for the Mets if he can't pass one for the Giants? And the answer is he didn't pass his physical with the Mets. So baseball, and again, I'm still heartbroken over this Trevor Bauer being reinstated by Major League Baseball, and I just hope that he doesn't get signed by some team because there's no place. We started off the show talking about what class as a sports athlete means and how important it is. And this guy doesn't belong on a Major League Baseball field. But, the big story is the Carlos Correa thing. And you're right. I mean, the Mets are trying to fill each and every position with a $200-300 million purchase. And we know, sometimes that works out. Sometimes you just can't buy a championship. And
it's funny. We talk about fantasy sports, and this guy, Steve Cohen, really thinks he has, he's going to buy, like you said, a all-star at every position, like he's doing a fantasy draft.
Right. Well, we're going to see how that pans out, but this is an intriguing story that nobody saw coming. I honestly, I thought the Mets, had already given Correa that physical, and he passed it before he put that money on the table. But he never signed that deal yet. It was just an offer. So we'll see how that pans out. Rob, before we move on to some random points of interest, college hoops, Purdue and UConn. You brought up UConn a couple of weeks ago. As a matter of fact, they haven't been relevant in quite some time outside of the women's basketball, but they're undefeated and they're number 2. So Purdue and UConn holding the number 1 and number 2 spots in college basketball. Unusual. Again, we talked about it, like, where's Clemson, where's Alabama in football? Well, where's Duke, where's North Carolina? North Carolina was the preseason number 1, and they're not even in the top 15 right now. So
speaking of Carolina, they signed the kid from Bergen Catholic.
Who?
Kudo.
Oh, all right.
Who ended up going to Texas, I think, for a year to play, but he started his high school career in Bergen Catholic.
Oh, that's panned out good for North Carolina like 25 years ago when Pat Sullivan won a national championship with the Tar Heels out of Bergen Catholic. Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see. I watched North Carolina play. They have good players. It's just not clicking on all cylinders right now. And like I said, it's up and down. I mean, Kentucky's been losing. But there was an interesting, and it's one of these college basketball games where you say, really, does Gonzaga, a perennial top 5 college basketball team, took on Eastern Oregon yesterday. Eastern Oregon, which is an NAIA team. Gonzaga won that game by 78 points.
That's horrible.
I mean, right? It was 120-42.
No, that is right. That's the money they get from Gonzaga to play the game that pays all the coaches' salaries.
I guess. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it's that Pacific Northwest thing, give these kids a shot. But you're talking about, the Celtics beating, St. Mary's School for the Blind, on a basketball court. Just, you got to question whether or not that's even smart. I don't know. That's one of the biggest losses I've ever seen, 78 points. That's my point. So, Rob, let's move on to random points of interest, which, of course, is sponsored by Lynch Toyota of Manchester, Connecticut. And just a couple of things. Ed Reed, right? We saw this all pan out, right, with Deion Sanders going to Jackson State, which we knew was a prelim to a bigger job, which he now has at Colorado. Ed Reed, Hall of Fame football player for the Ravens, taking over at Bethune-Cookman. And, I don't know much about what Ed Reed has been doing since he retired from football, but, that's notable as far as I can see. And watch, we're going to see people will go play for Ed Reed because he's a Hall of Famer, just like they did for Deion Sanders at Jackson State, right? Ed Reed was no doubt a Hall of Famer in the NFL for sure. So I wish him good luck. Another thing, and I didn't realize the whole backstory of this David Ortiz when he was down in the DR. They convicted 10 guys to conspire to kill David Ortiz. I thought this was just, one of like a barroom type situation. That I didn't realize how the conspiracy was so widespread to net 10 guys planning on killing him.
Something and you got a wife or something, right?
Huh?
Something to do with his wife and a drug dealer or something, or a capo, or.
I really wish I knew more about the details about this, but I mean, he's a beloved figure in the Dominican Republic, and they had 10 people trying to take him out, and thank goodness unsuccessfully. But I thought that was a story that I said they're never going to get anybody on this. It's it's the DR. How are you going to finger some guys for this? I don't know, but he survived, and listen, justice was done. They got the 10 guys. but you're right. There's more of a backstory than I even know. You probably know more than me, but anyway, and one last random point of interest. I thought this was from a humanitarian perspective, the situation with Blaine Gabbert, backup quarterback in Tampa, right? There's a helicopter crash. He's out jet skiing with his brothers, and they go in there and they rescue some of these people that were in obvious distress. And all four of those people on that plane survived. And Blaine Gabbert, these people didn't even know who he was until they read it in the paper the next day. Hey, he's the backup quarterback for Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That just goes to show you that when people are in distress, people react, and that was great timing. Fortunate for those people on the helicopter crash that these guys didn't just ride off on their jet skis the opposite way. And I wanted to give a shout out to him for that. Because I remember, it's probably 25, 30 years ago. Remember there was a running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, Joe Delaney. And he was, somebody was drowning in some lake or something, and he was there, and he ended up drowning himself. And that's immediately what I thought of, and that's why some people say, "Well, I'm not gonna get involved in this," right? But Joe Delaney, I remember he was a good running back for the Chiefs, and from a humanitarian perspective, he makes the ultimate sacrifice to save somebody else. I thought it was awesome. Anyway, Rob, so there's some notable passings. Obviously, we started off with Pele, and rightfully so. But there was also a couple of notable passings in the world of golf. Kathy Whitworth, who is the all-time winningest, right? She's won more tournaments than Sam Snead and Tiger Woods. Unbelievable. 88 career victories. She was 83 years old, but when you're going to talk about a dominating player on the LPGA Tour going back, many, many years, she's one of them. And she passed away at 83, but an unbelievable career with 88 career wins. That's something special. Rob, there is a notable passing that I wanted to mention because it's for a dear friend of mine, our loyal listener of the show, Diego, our soccer resident expert. His dad, Alberto, passed away this past week, and I wanted to make sure that we send our best wishes to one of my dearest friends and his family on the passing of his father. His father was, a great story, right? Came with his family in 1970 from Colombia, with probably not more than, a handful of change in his pocket, and he raised a great family and made a career for his family. And I met him several times, and his father was just a genuinely nice guy, and I wanted to mention that. And Diego, our thoughts and prayers go out to your family during this time. There was also a couple other notables. Barbara Walters passed away yesterday. And listen, you have to say, she was 93 years old. She was Oprah Winfrey before Oprah Winfrey. You know what I mean? As far as getting the big stories, the big interviews of her time. And she had quite a career. And I didn't realize she was still alive, to be honest with you. I thought Barbara Walters was 75 back in the 70s and 80s when she was doing it. But R.I.P. to her. She was 93 years old, but had a very influential role in media and interviews and so forth. So I wanted to bring that up as well. And also, Pope Benedict passed away yesterday. I'm kind of on the fence with this, not about him passing or not passing, but there was a lot of controversy surrounding him with the whole Catholic Church issue. And I don't want to obviously get into politics, but, he was 95 years old, and he was the first pope in 600 years to resign, and Pope Francis took over. So, he's still a man of God, I guess, but I just don't know about some of the controversial decisions that he made. But he was 95, so R.I.P. to him. So listen, we would love to hear your thoughts about, everything from Pele. And again, send us an email at sportswithmonoandmono@gmail.com. We love to hear from you. And listen, Rob, it is the last day of 2022. So we send our Happy New Year regards to our fan base and to your family. And, Steve will be back with us as soon as he's able. And you know what? We always try to turn the page on the previous year, right? Especially in sports, when we lose, great athletes and great figures in either entertainment or politics. We always bring them up because, they are the foundation for pretty much everything. In a year where we lose, Mike Bossy, that kind of a figure in sports, and Gino Cappelletti in football, but I want to make sure I send a Happy New Year to all of our loyal listeners, and we thank them very much for all their support. Mike Garvey and so forth, just Tony out in Washington State. And like I said, our fan base is growing, Rob, and doing a good job with the production, and I appreciate that. So I wish you a happy New Year to you as well, my friend.
You and your family and Steve and everybody.
Yeah. So listen, everybody, thanks. Don't drink and drive tonight. It's New Year's Eve. Not a smart thing to do. Rob will be spinning some discs up at the resort, right? So have a safe trip up there. It's kind of mild. This time last week we were talking
minus 30.
Huh? Yeah,
up there was like minus 30 wind chill this last weekend.
Right, and yesterday it was 61 degrees outside.
That's 90-degree difference. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. But Rob, listen, enjoy a safe trip up, and have a happy New Year. And
you too. Happy New Year.
Thanks for all your production support and stuff, and look forward to taking the show into the next 2023.
Yep, let's do it.
All right, everybody, enjoy yourselves. Enjoy the games today and tomorrow, and we'll see you guys same time next week. Thanks.
Yep.